Good Yontif. So about 6 years ago, we got our kitchen redone. And I mean, actually we meant to get it done about 12 years ago, but we were told we had to get a leak in our kitchen ceiling fixed first. And by the time that was done, we were already over budget. So, you know, it's funny, I have never heard a story of significant home improvement that does not include suffering. I mean, it's remarkable to me that I could be privileged enough to own a home and to have the resources to improve my home and to be on the way to improving it. But the whole experience is just awful. As a rabbi, I pastor to you when times are rough. And I can tell you, home improvement, it's on the list. As I said on Rosh Hashanah, if you are lucky enough to own a home, you know it's never fixed. Sometimes even with great effort, like remodeling a kitchen, the work still isn't done. So in our kitchen, there just wasn't the right place for one of those cabinets that you use to hide the garbage can. And we really wanted that. So we worked with our architect and we worked with our contractor and we designed this little pull-out cabinet, not standard, but it fit right next to the sink. We thought that would work. And you know what? It does work. I mean, sometimes even for a week or two at a time. But I don't know, either because it's always getting banged by the aluminum foil drawer that's right next to it, or because it's just so narrow, it just, more often than not, is out of true or wobbly or just unable to close. So every couple of months, Sarah or I, more often it's Sarah, we'll get out a screwdriver and we'll just tighten everything and realign the whole contraption. And you know, it's remarkable, even knowing that it won't last for more than 1 or 2 weeks, it's still pretty satisfying to get it back in working order again. The thing is, you know, it's not just our garbage cabinet that's broken. We need to fix the front door, and our banister on the staircase is broken. I think probably this metaphor is pretty clear. I mean, it's not just our homes. There are so many other places, our jobs, our health, our relationships, so many places where there is constantly work that needs to be done. We could all make a long list of what is broken in our lives, what is constantly in need of repair, and of what will eventually, inevitably, fall apart. You know, if you stop and think about it, it's actually a little overwhelming, because it's not only the water heater that is about to rust out or the tires on our car that will eventually go bald. We know everyone we love will eventually die. The earth will one day be swallowed by the sun. You know, Jews are generally not that comfortable talking about faith. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner says that if you ask a Jewish person if they are a person of faith, the way that they defend and evade, it's almost as if they had been brought in front of the House Committee on Un-American Activities. It's a little like Tevye on Fiddler on the Roof asking Golda, "Do you love me? Do I love him? For 25 years I've lived with him, fought with him, starved with him. 25 years, my bed is his. If that's not love, what is? Then you love me." I suppose I do. and I suppose I love you too. Talking to Jews about faith, it's like that. Here you are, it's Yom Kippur. You're fasting, you're reading prayers, you're thinking about tshuva. You're trying to be a better person, you're trying to make repair, you're listening to my sermon, and this ritual is so important to you that you're participating remotely through your computer. But if I ask you, do you have faith? You might reply, I have to say, I think it depends, but I volunteer, I help my friends, give tzedakah, and keep my vows. After so many years, why talk about faith right now? Do you have faith? For so many years, I've been a Jew. Service and seders, I always do. So many years, my shul is this. If that's not faith, what is? Then you have faith. I suppose I do. I suppose I have faith too. Maybe you can even hear Golda conceding. We don't lack faith, but neither do we lack doubts. Adam Gopnik says, our ancestors acknowledged doubt, but practiced faith. We moderns, we are drawn to faith while practicing doubt. Unlike the question, do you have faith? If I ask you, do you have doubts? There's rarely any hesitation. Of course we have doubts. We are confident in our doubts. When we believe the worst about people or our government or the world, we are rarely asked to justify our doubts. We seem to have plenty of faith that things can and will get worse. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav taught, if you have faith that you can destroy, have faith that you can repair. It's understandable. When things go wrong, doubt arises. And when things get really hard, it shouldn't be a surprise that our trust in the rightness of the universe and the value of our effort falters. But it's exactly at those moments when things are hard and there's no obvious path forward that we most need faith. When our spirits are down, when we have to act and work with exerting great effort, even without knowing if it will help, these are the moments we need faith. Maybe this very moment, maybe this moment is such a moment for you. A moment when, more than usual, you know you need faith. A moment when you want to trust your assumptions, that you can trust your community and humanity and the world, that those assumptions are true and trustworthy, or at least that they are true enough to keep trying. Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan said, to live in accordance with what ought to be is to invest in the world to be. This investment implies the existence of a power that endorses the risks and sacrifices people make for the sake of the future. Faith means imagining the world as it ought to be and trusting that somehow there is a power in the universe that is aligned with this vision. Most of us will face significant challenges in our lives, challenges that demand hardship and sacrifice and suffering. And in those moments, we rely on faith. We rely on faith that our efforts are part of something bigger, that the world is as it ought to be. Our challenge is not that we lack faith, but that we are not in the habit of practicing it. We need to practice it so that we can count on it, so that when we are most in need of it, it'll be there. Now is a good time to start practicing. In 1938, after Austria was annexed by Germany, Switzerland closed their border to Jews who were seeking safety. And it was the job of a man named Paul Gruninger, a 47-year-old policeman, to guard the border. He was faced with a dilemma: turning the refugees back or breaching the instructions of his government and suffering the consequences. Gruninger decided to disregard the official instructions and to let the desperate refugees into Switzerland. And moreover, he decided to, in order to legalize them, he would falsify their registration so that their passports showed that they had arrived in Switzerland before entry into the country had been restricted. When Germany informed the Swiss government of Gruninger's actions, he was fired. He was brought to trial for illegally permitting the entry and falsifying the documents of 3,600 Jews. His pension was taken away, he was fired, he was forced to pay the costs of his own trial. Ostracized and forgotten, Gruninger lived the rest of his life in difficult circumstances. But despite the difficulties, he never regretted his action on behalf of the Jews. And he explained, it was basically a question of saving human lives threatened with death. How could I then seriously consider bureaucratic schemes and calculations? It was only well after his death in 1995 that the Swiss government finally annulled his conviction. Faith requires trust, and it requires that we act in ways that are trustworthy. The Hebrew word that is most commonly translated as faith is emunah. In the Bible, it's not used to describe belief in God, which is taken for granted. Emunah in the Bible refers to our trust in God. It is an assertion that God is trustworthy. Think for a moment about your next-door neighbor. Whether your neighbor exists or not, that is not a matter of faith. But whether your neighbor is reliable and trustworthy, these are questions of emunah, faith. This summer, B'nai Keshet members Lisa Auslander and Jessica Brader decided to organize a Get Out the Vote letter writing campaign. When they started, they really had no other plan other than to help people who were feeling anxious about the election just do something and maybe feel a sense of connection to each other as they tried. After some advice from different groups, they planned a single Zoom meeting to write letters encouraging Florida voters to participate. Several months later, over 120 people from B'nai Keshet and from neighboring congregations have joined this effort. And as of now, they've written almost 5,000 letters encouraging underrepresented voters in highly contested districts to vote. And it should be noted, they did this without knowing the party affiliation of the letter recipients. Rather, they acted in faith that for a very important election, more voters and more participation will lead to a better outcome, regardless of how the individuals written to actually vote. Faith means trusting in others to make their own decisions. It means trusting in human goodness, even when others make choices different from our own. The writer Adrienne Marie Brown teaches that what we pay attention to grows. Choosing what we will pay attention to is a terrific way to practice faith. Teshuvah is about turning towards what we want to grow, towards what feeds the best in us. This winter, when statements suggesting anti-Semitic bias were made by a Montclair leader in the African American community, the rabbis in town, while acknowledging the bias, went out of our way not to condemn him personally. And when the opportunity arose for us to meet face to face and talk through our concerns, rather than calling him out, we called him in. Again, later, when the opportunity arose, we showed up, we white rabbis with black clergy, gathering and responding, not only to these comments, but to all the feelings that had been stirred up. And we didn't know where this would go. And it sometimes teetered between feeling deeply profound and very frustrating, between big misunderstandings and revelation. But everyone came with faith, and trust was built. Out of those meetings, relationships were formed, and we came together to try and address another challenge, that of affordable housing in Montclair, an issue which, in fact, affects us all. And joined by other clergy, we helped to get rent control ordinance passed in this town after decades of previous failures. We practice faith when we assume the best of our neighbors, when we invest in relationships to build trust. We practice faith when we trust we can work through disagreements to make our community stronger. Maybe you don't want to talk about faith, but I have to tell you that I have seen so many of you practice faith. I have seen you take awe-inspiring and courageous steps when you just simply didn't know where those steps would lead. Leaving jobs without having a new job. Adopting children who you knew from the beginning already had faced significant challenges. Choosing to continue a relationship with someone who had been unfaithful. Choosing to end a relationship despite fear of being alone, or not having enough money, or not feeling safe. Standing up for what you believe in, even though it meant risking your job. Caring for aging parents with dignity. Forcing yourself to get out of bed when you're depressed. I have seen you practice faith in these circumstances and so many more. You already know how to practice faith. So, if now is a moment when you are in doubt, if now is a moment when you need faith because you're not sure what the future holds, worry less about having faith and keep focusing on practicing faith. Keep imagining the world as it ought to be and trusting that somehow there is a power in the universe that is aligned with this vision. Keep turning towards what you want to see grow. And keep assuming the best of your neighbors. Keep trusting in human goodness even when others make choices different from your own. Keep investing in relationships. keep being trustworthy and acting in a way that will inspire others to trust you. Keep trusting that what can be broken can be fixed. And practice believing that if you can destroy, you can also repair. Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed for a good year. That's it.